Today, we are going to talk all things managing your rental properties. Your property isn't passive and it never will be. What's passive is your power if you don't know how to manage what you own. This video is a breakdown of how you manage your properties profitably, efficiently, and most importantly, with authority. We are going deep on what it actually takes to operate rentals that don't drain your energy or, most importantly, your bank account. You see, you win by validating every process, by validating everyone you bring on board to help support you, and by honestly validating every single decision. Here's what I'll be talking about in this video. Self-management versus hiring a property manager. Learning how to assess whether you need full control or full support. And also the costly mistakes to avoid on both sides. We're going to talk a little bit about finding and screening your tenants. I'll show you how to attract high quality renters and also how to ask the right questions so that you never feel rushed into fulfilling a vacancy again. We're also going to talk about automation tools for short-term rentals. This is how you get your time back. Automation, automation, automation. From messaging to pricing to cleaning schedules, we'll cover the tools that will make short-term rentals especially sustainable for you. We'll then move on to talk about how you can manage maintenance and repairs on your properties. From that leaky faucet to the nightmare contractors, I've had all of these experiences. You will get a clear system for handling repairs, protecting your peace, and staying on budget. By the end of the video, what I want you to be able to do is to walk away with a full operational game plan built for women like you who have a career but is also building a side business. I don't want you to be an overwhelmed landlord. I want you to feel organized, confident, and clear because managing real estate isn't just about the properties. It's about protecting your time, your income, and most importantly, your energy and peace of mind. So, my darlings, if you are ready to stop reacting and start running your portfolio with purpose, keep watching. Welcome to Lessons Lived, everybody. My name is Mandy. If you are new here, I'm so glad you found our corner of the internet. Ours is a community of ambitious women who take action. We don't just learn our lessons, we live them. We leverage our full-time jobs to build scalable businesses because we know wealth is not an escape plan, it's a power move. Your 9 to 5 is a launching pad, my darling. It's not a limitation. So this channel is for the ladies who are ready to turn their careers into capital, their expertise into income, and their business into a legacy. If that is you, you are in the right place, and we're so happy to have you. Now let's talk about the issue at hand here, managing your rental properties. So do you need to self-manage or do you need to hire a property manager? This is probably one of the most important decisions you are going to make in real estate to guarantee your peace of mind and your control. Both approaches have pros and cons, and your choice will depend on factors such as time, commitment, experience, and most importantly, your budget. Self-managing your properties have certain pros. You get full control over tenant selection, rent control, and property maintenance. And this gives you cost savings because you are avoiding property management fees that can be anywhere from 8 to 12%, sometimes even more if you are hiring a property manager for a vacation rental. You also get direct communication with the tenants. This allows for a personal relationship and a faster way of solving issues. It also gives you a greater ability to implement certain policies, adjust your rents, and tailor your lease terms to your specific investment strategy. However, there are cons. It's time intensive. It requires you to handle the marketing yourself. It requires you to handle the tenant screening yourself, the rent collections, the maintenance requests. You also have to take the time to be knowledgeable about landlord-tenant laws so that you can avoid any legal pitfalls that will surely come from this business. Also, there's a lot of emotional bandwidth involved in managing your own property. You have to be the person who's reinforcing the lease. That can be challenging. This can lead to difficult tenant interactions, right? You also have an increased responsibility for handling emergency repairs, unexpected maintenance issues at all hours of the day. They can call you at 3 o'clock in the morning. To be very honest, those 3 o'clock in the morning calls don't really happen. Trust me, the calls do not have to come at 3 o'clock in the morning for them to stress you out. Just this week, I had about 3 or 4 different calls. I would have preferred someone else to handle those, but I'm the person handling them. So that is you self-managing your property. Now let's talk about hiring a property manager. Here are some of the pros to hiring a property manager. It saves you time. It will reduce your stress level. Promise. Right? Because the professionals will be handling the day-to-day operation, including any tenant disputes, repairs. They also should have expertise in marketing your property. They should have expertise in tenant screening and any legal compliance. This ensures that there's better tenant screening and honestly tenant retention. And this is why you hire right. With the property manager, you also have the ability to scale your portfolio without you personally feeling overwhelmed by all the management tasks. And this allows you to focus more on acquiring the property and less on making sure that the nitty gritty of every single day details are all on your shoulders. Professional managers have established relationships with contractors, or at least they should, right? Often securing you better rates for maintenance and repairs. I'm going to put a pause on this. That is not always true. Certain property managers do not know your personal standard of what a quality, not quality, what a affordable service is. I have worked with property managers who were like, oh yeah, no, this is the best guy. He charges like $300 for something. And I'm like, wait, I used to have somebody, he may not have been the best guy, but he was giving me this service for like $120. And for certain services, I don't want the best guy. I want a good guy who will do a good job. So it's up to you here to really begin to vet this. This is why I say that it's not as passive as you may think it actually is. The cons of property managers is it is expensive. It will cost you. Monthly management fee will reduce your overall rental income. And it can be a significant expense, especially for people like us who have smaller portfolios. You have less direct control over your tenant relations and property decisions. This may have an overall impact with management satisfaction from the tenant perspective. There's also the risk of hiring an unresponsive and less than competent property manager. My darling, some of us get lucky and we have good ones, but just like contractors, property managers come in all shapes and sizes. If you know, you know. If you hire a not so competent property manager, this can not just lead to headaches on you, but it will also lead to mismanagement and honestly financial loss. Some property managers will also charge you additional fees for lease renewal, advertising, maintenance, oversight, and these will increase over time. When it comes to hiring a property manager, you need to pick wisely and you need to take a step back and not just pick the first person who comes to you. You really need to take the time to vet several property managers, ask them how this can service you, not just reduction in cost that they would give you, but what the philosophy of managing is. And by you vetting several people, it allows you to really find the one you connect with up here, and in the way that they do work. Now let's move on to talk about finding and screening tenants, specifically for long-term and mid-term rentals. Securing reliable tenants is so important in guaranteeing not just a steady rental income, but also avoiding any damage to your property and the few rare chances that you have to do a costly eviction in the future. A lot of people want anybody into their property, and let me tell you something, due diligence matters. And sometimes gut feeling is a way of protecting you against a potentially costly eviction. But this is where you will have to balance your gut feeling, because guts are not legal entities, with whatever the laws are when it comes to finding the right tenant. So let's talk first about where to find that tenant. This is the 21st century. You can literally find a tenant from any source. But finding the tenant is just the beginning. You have lots of different online listing platforms: Zillow, apartment.com, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, rent.com. I'm going to be honest, I personally haven't really found a whole lot of success on these platforms. I feel like these platforms tend to attract, for me, tenants that are less than desirable, but you have a few more options for finding quality tenants. Local classified, you can put an ad on your newspaper, but I'm going to be honest with you. This is something that works a little bit better if you're wanting something very specific and unique. And I recently was living in a rural area, and we needed to be a little bit more creative about how we found our tenants. If you have churches, if you belong to certain communities in your neighborhood, use those community bulletins to see if you can find you a tenant. Another source, this is my preferred source for finding a tenant: real estate agents. I'm actually currently in the process of working with one to help me find a tenant for one of my properties that I will be self-managing. You need to look for a real estate professional who specializes in rental replacements. Okay, this will be really important. Not all real estate professionals understand how to place tenants. Most of them will, especially if they are smart about diversifying their income. They will do more than just being a buyer's agent. But some of them don't. They're so busy with selling houses or helping buyers that they will not have time for you as somebody who's looking for services when it comes to finding the right tenant. What my property manager has done in the past, they've done the exact same thing to find me tenants than they would to find themselves buyers, right? They will hold an open house or virtual tours to attract more applicants and increase competition for our rentals. That is what you want. So far, I have yet to really have any issues. Knock on wood, I won't even go further and say that, because we never know what the universe is hearing. Right? However, if you can find the right real estate agent, that would go a long way in guaranteeing that you, my darling, find the right tenant for yourself. So for Nandy, my preferred method of all of those different methods is to get a real estate agent to help me. I have tried to put my own property on Craigslist. I'm sure I was doing a lot of things wrong. I wasn't very successful, but I do believe that if you're somebody who can make the time to learn the tips and the tricks of making it work, then doing it yourself is the right way. I think you're already hearing the trend in what Nandy will be saying throughout this whole series. I am a woman with a full-time job in corporate America, wanting to build multiple rivers, not just streams of income. I don't have the time to go into the weeds and try to do minute little details. For me, it's worth paying that money for somebody else who already has the expertise to accelerate my success. So we discussed finding your tenant. Let's talk about the screening process. I do a little bit of this screening by myself. So for example, for my midterm rental, I don't use a real estate agent for that, right? I have certain website furnished finders, Airbnb, and sometimes even Facebook Marketplace, but I haven't been very successful finding tenants on Facebook Marketplace. And when I do that process myself, I have a screening process that I've now established to help me find the right tenant. My screening process does involve me not doing things on my own. I use certain softwares where I can just plug in my whole process. These are the questions I want to ask. We want to do a background check. We want to do a credit check. And then when that's done, this is what we're going to do. And I use certain softwares to guarantee that I am successful in that process. So the software you use here is going to be really important. You need to first have some pre-screening questions. So on my software, I'm currently using Rent Ready, but I don't know that I will be continuing working with them because not because they're bad. I just don't use it enough to guarantee the services, especially since right now I'm in the process of transitioning as many of my properties into long-term rentals as possible. You need to ask about employment, income, rental history, pets, smoking, and moving time frame to ensure that they're compatible. This is the pre-screening. Before they even fill out the application, I ask them certain questions to make sure that they are the right tenant to move on to the application process, because the application process has a cost. And I don't want them wasting their money if they're not going to be the right tenant. Every once in a while, I talk to them on the phone first, and we're like, you know what, you'll be the perfect tenant, bypass the pre-screening, move directly into the application. Now let's talk about the application process. The application process should always include a background and a credit check. You need to verify their income. You want them to have at least 3x the monthly income of that rent. This is not something to sleep on, right? You want to make sure that they will bring enough to be able to pay their own bills, to pay taxes, and then to pay you. You need to make sure that they have a good credit score. Every once in a while, you have somebody who life happened to them and their credit score is not best. Those become unique situations that makes the job challenging, right? But it will be up to you to decide whether or not, based on everything else you've assessed, if this is the only thing that's missing, whether they will be a good or a not so good candidate. And also, if you're not part of a ladies landlord real estate community, join one, because it's under these circumstances that you will rely on that community and ask them a lot of very detailed questions that are specific to your situation. You want to understand their rental history so that you can assess financial stability. Yes, right? If they got evicted everywhere they went, but that's a challenge. If they got evicted one time and you hear the story, there was a legitimate reason, something unique happened that made life challenging, but everything else looks good, that's also a different story. You want to check the criminal record. Thank God, so far, I have not been put in a situation where I had to decide whether or not somebody had a criminal record. If you want to push it that far, you also want to ask for any former landlord references so that you can just kind of gauge their reliability. I know my current property manager does that. For my midterm rentals, I do not ask for that. I look at very simplistic things, background check, and I look at eviction record and also like a driving record. Like those few basic things. And then I look at the credit score and how much they bring in. Because these tenants for me are only staying for like 3 to 6 months. I don't need to make their lives difficult. But when we meet tenants that need to stay there for 12 months to a year, this is where I love relying on property managers, because it's not about me and my emotions and my fear of not being able to pay for my mortgage the next month. They can be a little bit more level-headed in making those decisions. So once they've gone through the application process, it helps and it's very beneficial that you try to get them on the phone to talk to them. I promise you, people are different when they're writing things on paper or typing things online than they are when they get on the phone with you. Please, please, please do not skip this step. If somebody is going to come into your home, take the time to pick up the phone and talk to them, especially for your long-term tenants. You need to conduct a phone or best in-person interview, because you want to begin, like, I'm not gonna lie, when I'm talking to future tenants, I'm looking at their aesthetics, not because I give a crap if they are pretty or ugly, right? You wanna see, is this somebody who at least takes some sort of pride in their appearance, right? Is their car full of crap? I'm not saying that they have to be clean. That's not what I'm saying. There's definitely a baseline, right? You want to be assessing all of these things, and you want to do it consistently. And I'm not interested in your race, ethnicity, or all of that, because that is legal. And no, that's not what we're talking about. We're looking at, okay, Are there at least somebody who are coming and they take pride in the things that they currently own? They take some sort of pride in their appearance, right? Because that will determine whether or not they will take pride in your home. There's no guarantee. All of these things, we're just giving ourselves the best chance. We're not guaranteeing anything. This business is not about guarantee. Business in general and life in particular is not about guarantees. But you want to do certain things to at least give you a leg up. You also want to examine the communication style. Are they going to be somebody who will be combative? Are they going to be somebody who you can negotiate with, who you can have open communication with, who is kind, who's understanding? Because they will extend the same level of kindness and understanding to you as the landlord. So make sure you get on the phone and do all of those analyses. Talk to them, observe the communication style. I say get on the phone because I do not live where my properties are rented. But my darling, when I lived where my properties were, I made sure I met every single person before they moved in. And on the day that they moved in, I also made sure that I was visible. I was there. That is me, right? The difference between being local and being long distance. If they've gone through all of this process, you're like, yes, let's move you in. Now let's talk about the lease agreement. You need to make sure that everything is legally compliant before the lease is signed. What are the rent terms? What are the maintenance responsibilities? Who's responsible for watering the lawn? What is the expectations for watering the foundation, etc.? Any property rules that you want to implement, right? What are the lease violations? Any clause for rent increase? Guest policies? Specific maintenance procedures? And most importantly, different things that can help prevent disputes later. You need to think through all of this stuff. And honestly, if you are a new landlord, it's okay. Your first time will be rough, my darling. But as you gain more experience, you'll be adding things that weren't in there that you're like, no, we need to bring that. When I first started renting out my properties to midterm rentals, I was paying electricity and I didn't have a utilities clause. Guess who has a utilities clause now? This girl, because when somebody else is paying for water, when somebody else is paying for electricity, people go crazy. So I needed to put a clause to be like, hey, this is what I will reasonably pay for. This is the historical analysis of how many watt usage per month was spent on this property. If you go above this number, this is what it's going to cost you, da 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 da, right? So you will eventually figure out what makes the most sense for you as the landlord who is probably taking on certain responsibilities for maintenance, for bills, etc. But really take the time here to ask for as many people around you as to what are addendums that I should include, right? What are extra things that should be in this list? I will be doing another series that will be all about paperwork. So you can see how I've structured my numbers. You can see how I have built out my systems. So that would probably be a whole nother series because real estate is just, there is so much involved in real estate. It pays you great dividend for a reason, but there's a lot involved in it. So far, everything we've talked about had a long-term and mid-term rental perspective. Now let's talk a little bit about short-term rentals or vacation homes. When it comes to short-term rentals, you really need to be more involved. You need to be more in the weeds, and you need to automate as much as you possibly can. Because short-term or vacation rentals are a different ballgame. Everything we just talked about when it comes to long-term and mid-term rentals, that is completely different from short-term rentals. This is where your systems will either make you or break you, honey. You need to do a lot of things in order for you to be efficient and to be very organized. We're talking even your cleaning systems need to be efficient and they need to be organized. Your training modules for the cleaning ladies need to be organized and systematized. You need automated tools that can help streamline your operations and most importantly, the guest experience. And by automation, we mean when those guests go onto your property, do you have to run over there and give them the keys? Can you have a drop box with a code for them to put the keys? Better yet, do what Nandy does. Can you have a keypad where there's no need for a key. The key is only there as backup. They can go in. Most people do this, right? This is not rocket science. It's very common for Airbnbs to have an automated key process. And that key process would change the lock number every time the guests go there. Boom, 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 boom. New lock. When they check out, that keypad changes. And when it's time to onboard the new guest, they get a new key code. Why am I calling it a key code? A door pad code. A door code. So all of these things will guarantee that you have less headaches. When it comes to your cleaning lady, I add my cleaning lady as an assistant property manager, and she can sometimes answer questions for me. If the guests are asking for something, she already knows what they're asking for. I don't need to go back and translate information to her. She has that information. And because she is on site and I am long distance. You need that type of support. Ordering certain reusable items. I have a playlist that's already ready to go. Every single month, all I have to do is press a button and those things go through. And if the cleaning lady is like, wait, we have way too much paper towels, when I make that purchase, I just remove that particular one button click, do not order this, everything else goes. Automate as much as you can. Messaging. I have pre-written messages that are programmed into my Airbnb and on my phone when I use other platforms that don't have the same messaging automation systems. So when they book, an automatic message goes, thank you for choosing our property, blah, 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 blah. So some key automation tools, if you wanted to use them, right? Some people use dynamic pricing software tools like PriceLab and Beyond Pricing. I have used both of these automation tools because they help you understand what is happening in your market and adjust your pricing accordingly. So instead of you getting on your phone and going online looking at, okay, is there an event coming up? Do I need to lower my price or increase my price? Dynamic pricing will do that for you. A lot of these softwares now also have their own dynamic pricing. With this one, however, you do have to be careful because they can kind of try to get you often on the very low end. And I've also realized that for my properties in the city, dynamic pricing works well, but for my properties in rural area where there isn't a lot around for them to be able to gauge that pricing, it's so off. It's so off. I've had properties that were being marketed for almost $200 more than everybody else around me, and that was cutting into my booking. So just some things for you to keep in mind. Now, if you wanted to use certain booking management platforms, these are available. Lots of people swear by them. I think that if you only have one or two properties, this may not be an option. However, if you hope to scale to 10, 15 properties, these hosting platforms become almost like you're creating your own version of your own Airbnb, right? So you have Hospitable is one, Guesty and Lodgify. All of these will integrate with various rental property platforms, right, to centralize your reservation and avoid any double booking. So if you wanted to pull in Booking.com, Airbnb, Verbal, and all of these different platforms, you can manage everything from here so that you have visibility on who is coming, when they're coming. If they've already booked on Airbnb, it blocks the calendar so that no one on Booking.com or Verbal can book. Sometimes you can do this directly on Airbnb, but it does become challenging if you are on too many platforms. Guest communication, I shared this a little bit more. So let me be a little bit more specific when it comes to the automation of messages. This is probably the most important thing you can do to save your sanity. Because with Airbnb, you will get a lot of people who are not booking, who just want to ask X, Y, and Z questions because they're still shopping around for the best property. And once they become a guest, there's even more questions, right? So some of the questions will be specific, but for any communication that is standard, go ahead and automate. You can use Smart BNB, you can use HostAway, and this will handle booking confirmation, check-in instructions, house rule, review requests. Automate these things that are standard So you do not, so that you do not have to be the person to be going out there and, making sure that you're manually doing check-in messaging. Automate it all. Now, I'm going to be very honest. If you just have one property, you may be able to handle it, but honestly, why should you? But if you have more than one property, this is a non-negotiable. But sometimes when you only have one property, it may not justify the cost of you using some of these automated tools. Keyless entry. We need to circle back to this because I want to give a few more details on the importance of you not having to be one, fear of somebody walking out with the key. You guys, that happened to me one time where the guest walked out with the key. Something happened to the code and I only had one master key. Because I was like, well, the code is there. Worst case scenario, the master key will work for them. Somehow, I don't know if the tenant didn't know how to put batteries where they needed to go, but we tried to get them to change. I gave them the master key so that they can unlock the door and change the batteries. But they were like, it didn't work. So they kept the keys for like the 3 months they stayed. And when they left, they took the keys. It was a nightmare. I had to overnight keys to my cleaning lady so we can get ready for the next tenant. It was an utter nightmare. So now, not only do I have smart keyless entries, but I also have multiple keys on site. Right? And some of the smart locks that a lot of people use that I've used in the past are August. I personally haven't used August, but the two that I've used are Shalage and Yell. I have used those, but I've also used other things like UFI. So many options out there. Just be very careful not to, what's the term that I'm trying to use? You can go broke. Buying some of these keyless entries, but unfortunately all of them kind of have the same issues, right? When it gets too hot, batteries become an issue, so you always need a backup key. So now I have several drop boxes on my property. I have the drop boxes for my staff, my cleaning lady, my maintenance man, any person who's going out there to do any HVAC person, etc. And then I have one for the guests, so that if they need one, there's the code, you go in, you take that key. But you're not using my staff's key, right? So there's a distinction between those. And then here on site, I also have backups for all those different keys, okay? So you always want to make sure that you are protecting yourself, right? You want to allow your guests to be able to check in without a physical key, but in case of an emergency, there is something out there that they can use. Cleaning and maintenance schedules. There are also apps that you can use that would help this process for you. I haven't used them, but I've actually heard lots of people say really good things about this app, right? There's Turnover B&B and there's Breezeway. And what these will do is that they will connect you with cleaning services in your area that will help automate the turnover schedule, right? So my person who cleans for me and manages my property on site is added as my co-host on my Airbnb. That is also an option. But if you have too many of them, these automating tools will be great for you, right? And this is also really important. If there was ever a cancellation, a guest issue, they are there, you're communicating with them and they know, right? So your cleaning lady, no, you don't need to message them, hey, on Tuesday, the person will be checking out, can you come? They know it because you guys are connected to this app. A few more automation things that I want to touch on. Expense tracking and accounting. Vacation rentals or short-term rentals are extremely costly. You will constantly be putting in money into these things. You have got to have a way of tracking every expense for these properties. QuickBooks is a favorite one of mine and a favorite of a lot of people. Some people use Stessa, but there are lots of different options. You need to research what works best for you. And sometimes just Excel is fine. Okay, Okay, but you need to monitor your cash flow, you need to track your expenses, but most importantly, you need to prepare for tax season. And the more organized you are with your money, the easier it's going to be for you during tax season, and that will save you money. Do not sleep on expense automation. And right now I use Simplify to manage all of my rental expenses. I no longer have a complex system. So Simplify for me, it's just a way where I go and I track all of my personal, rental, and business expenses. They're all from separate accounts, but they feed into the same software. I want to repeat that. All of my expenses are on separate accounts. For my rental business, it's one account. For my business, the new business I'm building, it's on one account. My personal expenses are on a different account, but they all funnel into the same software, not as separate budget, but as separate categorized transactions. Okay, that is just a way for me to make my life easier. And when I have a little bit more time, I might be able to switch that into a more complex system. But that is simple and it works for me today. And my tax guy is always very happy because when I hand in my paperwork, I was like, this is exactly how much I spent here. This is how much I spent here. And I have the receipts to prove everything. Managing maintenance and repairs. This is an interesting one, right? You need to be proactive when you're managing maintenance, right, to keep your property in good conditions because you really need to prevent any costly repairs and you want to improve your guest satisfaction by establishing some sort of structured maintenance plan so that you are also reducing expenses in the future. So for example, me, I have a plan of when to spray for bugs. My property is in the country. I'm careful not to overspray, but I do have to do some spraying. So I have a clear schedule that is automated where they don't need me to call them and say, hey, have you done this? Right? I also have a structured maintenance for my HVAC system and for certain electrical things that need to be done at home, right? My septic system, that's also in a maintenance routine. So some of these are not necessarily about automation, but it's almost about automating the reminders to make sure that you're getting your preventative maintenance done. So here is kind of like my checklist for preventative maintenance, but you will build one that works for you. I get regular HVAC services done, like changing the filter. I buy from Amazon a big pack of like, I think it's about 5 or 10 of them. Send it over to them. It's there. And every month they just go and they switch them. Duct cleaning, that's also on maintenance. We check thermostat for accuracy, but that's all done by my HVAC guy. I don't need to be doing all of that. We also do runs through the property to inspect for any plumbing or any leaks that could be happening because when I bought this property, there were leaks that were popping up, you guys, every single month. At one point, I owed almost like $3,000. Thank God I was able to negotiate for them to lower the price, but it was a nightmare. So you need to be having your maintenance guys walk around the properties and doing checks. And you, my darling, need to be doing some of these checks yourself. Just walk around your property. Are there any leaks? Because trust me, honey, nobody will protect your money the way you would. I always make sure that all of the appliances are checked, smoke detectors, all of them. We switch batteries out about every 6 to 9 months. Or sometimes when we hear them beep, we'll make sure that the batteries are switched off. So these type of things are basic, but if you can automate at least the reminders, it will make life so much easier for you. Before we close out here, I want to take just a few minutes to talk about how to handle repairs and tenant calls efficiently. You need to be able to have some parsing of, is this an emergency or a routine repair, right? If a pipe bursts or there's flooding or there is electrical failure or a gas leak or a heating failure, that is an emergency. And this needs to be handled immediately. You won't go to bed now, you won't sleep, it needs to be handled immediately. And it's important that wherever you have your properties, you know who the people are for emergency repairs and who the people are for short-term repairs. The thing about emergency repairs is that they are so scary and nerve-wracking. They don't happen often. And sometimes, yeah, who are you going to call at 3 o'clock in the freaking morning if there's a gas leak? But then you also need to know the distinction between what is a routine repair, a leaky faucet, a minor appliance issue, a wall scuff, something happened to the paint, or my light bulb is not working, right? That's a routine request. Yes, it's important to that tenant at that time, but you can take a little bit of a breather, take your time to find somebody, and then have that taken care of. Where short-term rentals become a headache is that what is a routine thing may quickly become an emergency, right? Like the other day, a guest called because they were like, the water, the heating element is too hot, blah, 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 blah. So we had to go right in and meter the water temperature in the actual water tank itself. So that could have just been a routine thing if it was a long-term tenant, but for the short-term guests who are paying a little bit more, it became an emergency. And honestly, this is one of the biggest cons with short-term rentals, right? Routine things can become emergencies because you're trying to give them the best experience or they will leave you a bad review. And despite all of that work, they still ended up not leaving us a 5-star. And when it comes to Airbnb, trust me, a 4-star might as well be a failed. You need to make sure that with tenant request that you provide a clear process for how your tenants will report the issues to you. Is there an email that they send things to? Is there a software? Is there a phone line? Now, most of us are going to be individual little guys until we become big if we wanted to. We could have something as easy as, hey, if there's a request, email it here or text me. And you have to be able to respond promptly so that you're really maintaining a good relationship with your tenants. And if you can, do those routine maintenance so that you're preventing any costly escalation from happening. Let's say you by yourself cannot handle many of the little things, or your handyman cannot handle a lot of the little things, right? Let's say it's something bigger. I lived at a property one time where I looked at my bathroom and there was goo seeping through the walls. Come to find out that there was a leak in the wall that had been there for a long time and was slowly seeping through on the outside. So they had to get somebody to come, cut out the wall, find the leak, fix it, dry everything up, and then replace that part of the wall that they had cut out. That is probably too much for a handyman, right? A contractor need to come. So if you need to hire a contractor, make sure you get multiple quotes for that project. And this will be for your major repairs. I want to be very clear here. Sometimes the emergency is too big for you to go look for multiple quotes. But if you can, you want to make sure you do your due diligence. Verify the license, the insurance, and get the insurance information. Get references if you can, right? So just like when you're screening a tenant, you need to do your due diligence to guarantee less headaches. You need to do the same thing for the contractors. I have never really actually I shouldn't say that. I've had a lot of contractor issues, but that's because for a very long time, I was doing my real estate off the gun, right? It's like, oh my gosh, a great property has come up. I'm going to get that property. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm going to do this. It's like I was constantly backed up against the wall. And when you're backed up against the wall, guess what happens? You will make mistakes, and you will make a lot of mistakes. So learn from me. Get the insurance. If they say that they're insured, what's the insurance information? I had somebody who tried to run with like $15,000 of my money. I didn't have the insurance information. I didn't take it. Now, I was able to recoup some of it, but not all of it. Another guy right now owes me like $800, right? Is the headache of $800 worth chasing after them? Probably not, so I'm letting that go. But I'm like, ooh, I hope karma catches you, right? So when you look at the $800 and the few $1,000s that I've lost compared to other people who have lost hundreds and thousands, I've fared pretty well. But working with contractors, it's a different level of due diligence. So please take the time, have a written agreement for all of the work that's being done, not just for transparency, but also in case you need to take them to court, you have that information. And make sure you are tracking that everything is being done. Okay. Often, when you're starting a relationship with a contractor, you're both sweet on each other. Think of it like puppy love when you're first dating. But then, very quickly, both of you begin to realize, wait, something is not right here, right? They always claim that it's us, and we always claim that it's them. So, you decide, right? Have clear payment terms. When do I pay you? Don't make it time bound, make it project bound. Once you finish this project, then I pay you. This is how you save yourself money. A big mistake that I've made with my contractors, I made their project time bound. No more. Now it's going to be, hey, when you finish these different things, then I'll pay you. Not after a week, not after 2 weeks. No, that amateur nonsense we're done with. And you need to build a reliable list of trusted contractors, handymen, specialists, etc. Because I promise you, honey, good ones are very hard to find. And you pay the good ones with their worth within reason. Let's close out this video. Right? I know it was a lot of time, it was a lot of details, but I promise you it's all for a reason. Property management is where wealth is either protected or it's lost. Whether you're managing one unit or you're scaling a portfolio, the systems you put in place today will absolutely determine your success. This module has given you a comprehensive playbook for making smart operational decisions. From choosing whether to self-manage or to hire it out, attracting the right tenant to your property, automating your short-term rentals, and also at the same time staying ahead of the maintenance challenges. When done right, property management doesn't just protect your investment, it multiplies it. With the right tools, clear processes, and a property first mindset, you're not just managing doors, honey. You are running a real viable business that will support your income, your time, and your long-term vision for financial independence. My darling, if this video helped you get clear on how you can actually run your rentals, please share it with a woman who's building her real estate game right now. And please also subscribe for more power moves and no fluff strategies to building lasting, sustainable long-term wealth. And also join our community. We would love to have you as one of the members of the Power Move Collective, where we are women in corporate America, also navigating how to build our own sustainable, scalable businesses. Thank you so much for your time, and my darling, I will see you in the next module because yes, we are still going to be talking real estate next week. I'll see you in the next video.